Chapter 3 is called The Cubby House, and it describes the mixture of security and adventure that is the essence of the cubby. I provide a catalogue of different kinds of cubby, from the womb to the tomb. Here is the mystical cubby. Then there are mystical cubbies. The tabernacle in a church or chapel is one. To the Catholic believer, this is the house of God within the house of God, God's cubby. As a child, Julia remembered the shy reverence with which one looked to see if the red lantern beside the tabernacle was lit, to show if God was in, that is, whether there were ciboria of consecrated communion hosts within the tabernacle. Flowers, food, sacred music, incense, all creating the atmosphere of this particular house. In procession, the place of the tabernacle was taken by the monstrance. This awe-inspiring receptacle contained the host in a round glass frame surrounded by stylized gold metal rays. It was carried by the priest in the annual Corpus Christi procession, a ceremony which took place at Brigidine Convent each year in wintry June. Parents and relatives and friends would attend, and the convent girls would wear their special white uniform, which was also used for school and orchestral concerts. This was a white, knife-pleated linen tunic worn over a cream blouse and completed with white stockings, white veil, and white gloves. The procession would assemble in the chapel and then wend its way through the grounds to the destination of the school cricket pitch. In ordinary time, this large oval with its fringe of massive Moreton Bay figs was where they had lunch and where their amateurish sports were played, relay races around garbage tins, fly and easy-going softball. It was also the site of a rather spectacular summer school fete. But for the Corpus Christi procession, the grounds were transformed. The cricket pitch itself formed the basis for the Corpus Christi mat. For weeks before the ceremony, the nuns and specially chosen girls would work on this creation. It was a patterned mat painstakingly made out of different coloured sawdust and, at the last minute, flowers. The mat itself burgeoned into a horizontal setting for the altar. The most artistic nuns came up with the complex, ambitious design and directed the project. These nuns would also set to work wearing aprons, their hands dyed, and their veils pinned back for action. The procession would leave the top quadrangle and make its way slowly down the long, slopy path to the cricket pitch. There would be a sequence of hymns and prayers punctuated by decades of the Rosary. Pange lingua, gloriosi corporis mysterium, tantum ergo sacramentum, would coil through the procession with the inevitability of ancient spells. Sing, my tongue, the Saviour's glory, so great a sacrament. A sombre rhythm would be established. Despite the mood of intense prayerfulness, the words were whipped out of your mouth and whirled to the corners of the earth in the wild weather of June, winds buffeting the tall, gloomy palms. The incantations sounded muffled and close in your own head, and there was only a desolate, faint echo in chorus. Mostly you heard yourself piously intoning the prayers and hymns, eyes downcast onto your own slow, devout footsteps. But when you did lift your eyes, there was the beacon of the monstrance held high. Eventually and inevitably the monstrance, the priest and his acolytes would reach the mat, and black polished shoes would begin the dispersion of the design the nuns and girls had made. Essentially a ceremonial sand painting, the Corpus Christi mat would attain its apotheosis in destruction before your very eyes.